Flashpoint, flashpoint. Ramp up the danger, ramp up the danger. Not happening in a vacuum, not happening in a vacuum. Defense ties, defense ties. Military gear, military gear.
Okay, let's unpack this. We've got these sources looking really deep into the India-Pakistan rivalry, but also, importantly, the global powers involved. It's like a chessboard, isn't it?
It really is. And it's definitely not just about two countries.
No, exactly. It's got these huge international ripples. So our mission really is to sort of cut through all that complexity in history and just pull out the key things you need to know, give you that clear picture fast.
And there's quite a bit of history packed in, as the sources show. I mean, this whole thing starts with partition in 1947, violence displacement. Those wounds are still there, shaping things.
Right. And the absolute core of it, the flashpoint, is Kashmir.
Always Kashmir. Both nations claim it entirely. And, this has led to 3 actual wars, that really scary Kargil situation in 99, constant skirmishes.
And terrorism, that cycle of religious nationalism.
Yeah.
It's all in the mix.
It is. And the thing that just ramps up the danger, as these sources really underline, is that both India and Pakistan have nuclear weapons. That changes the whole calculation.
It's a heavy backdrop. But like you said, it's not happening in a vacuum. These global players have major interests. Let's maybe start with China. Their role seems quite distinct.
Oh, absolutely. China and Pakistan. The sources often use terms like strategic partner, sometimes even brother. You see it clearly with CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor.
A huge infrastructure project.
Exactly. And crucially, it runs through parts of Kashmir that India also claims. So China has a very real physical stake there now, which obviously India isn't happy about. Plus, China gives Pakistan a lot of political cover, defense technology, investment.
Yeah, cementing that relationship. And then you look at China and India.
And it's completely different, like night and day. You've got the border clashes we've seen, growing economic competition. It's tense.
Okay, so that's one major dynamic. Now, what about the U.S.? Because their position seems to have really shifted over time.
Massively shifted. If you go back to the Cold War, the U.S. was leaning more towards Pakistan.
But that's flipped now, hasn't it?
Completely. The sources point to the U.S. now seeing India as this key democratic counterbalance to China in Asia. And this isn't just talk, right?
No, it seems quite practical.
Very practical. You see it in trade deals, major defense partnerships, working together on really high-end technology drones, 5G development, even semiconductors. It's about weaving India into these key global networks, both for security and supply chains.
Wow. Okay, so China with Pakistan, the U.S. increasingly with India. Where does that leave Russia? Historically, they were very close to India.
They were India's main ally during the Cold War, yeah. And those defense ties are still strong. Russia supplies a lot of India's military gear, jets, even nuclear submarines.
But that's changing, too.
It's evolving. The sources indicate India's deliberately diversifying who it buys weapons from, bringing in more from the U.S., from Israel. It's not really about abandoning Russia, I think.
It's more about flexibility.
Exactly. Moving away from being dependent on one supplier. It's about having more strategic options, kind of playing a more non-aligned role in this multipolar world we're in.
Makes sense. Everyone wants options in a region this complicated. The sources also mention the Middle East connection briefly, Saudi Arabia, the UAE.
Yeah, that adds another layer. Historically, countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE were, crucial economic lifelines for Pakistan. Remittances, energy were big.
But that's shifting as well.
It is. They're also building much stronger business ties, even some strategic links with India now. Their own interests are broadening, you could say. It's not just Pakistan-focused anymore.
Okay, so if you tie all these different threads together, the deep history, the nuclear weapons, China, the U.S., Russia, the Gulf states, what are the sort of core drivers here? What does each side really want?
Well, it creates this really tangled web, doesn't it? For India, it seems to be about gaining global recognition, projecting power, and crucially, security against cross-border threats, which it often pins on Pakistan.
And Pakistan.
Pakistan's focus tends to remain on Kashmir, seeking international support for its position there, and trying to maintain some kind of power balance with India, often by leaning on allies like China.
And the big global powers, they just want influence.
Influence, yes, and strategic advantage in South Asia. But crucially, they all want to avoid things escalating into a full-blown war between two nuclear states. That's the tightrope they're all walking.
Such incredibly high stakes. And,
Yeah.
and the sources also remind us both India and Pakistan have huge internal issues to deal with, too. Economic inequality, climate change pressures.
Right, those big domestic challenges, large young populations needing opportunities, these things absolutely play into the bigger picture. They can't be separated.
Yeah, and yet, even with all this tension, the history, the global meddling, the sources do mention these little sparks of hope, as they call them.
Yeah, moments of diplomacy, sometimes sports links, cultural exchanges, things that occasionally manage to sort of bridge the gap, however briefly.
It's just, there's so much history weighing down on the region. You combine those old grievances, the nuclear reality, and all these global players pulling strings.
Yeah.
And it makes for this incredibly volatile, but also strangely delicate situation.
It really does. And that kind of leads to a final thought based purely on what these sources are telling us. If the future there is still, as they put it, up for negotiation, what real impact can those sparks of hope, diplomacy, sport, culture actually have? I mean, in a place defined by such high stakes and so much historical baggage, what do you think?